listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the NFL free agency and draft preview for Wednesday, March 18th, 2020. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, folks, we're soldiering on. Brian Blessing and Bruce Marshall in Las Vegas. Bruce from the Cold Sheet. And the NFL has given us at least a respite and a nice diversion and plenty to talk about with free agency. The day we're taping this, though, Bruce, just another big day in terms of the big picture where the governor of Nevada has said that's it. All the casinos, all non-essential buildings, which I think is still yet to be determined, have been closed. So this has been such a fluid thing, even as we've been talking here in the last week to 10 days, that it shut it down. And we hope for the best, and the NFL gives us something to look forward to. But it's odd. It's odd here. It's got to be odd where you folks are that are listening. It's crazy time.
Yeah, I mean, sports-wise, I joked the other day, it was every day is like Wednesday of the baseball All-Star week. That's just the sports view of it. Everything else, it's like the great New York City blackout of November of '65, and it just will last for like a month. Shutting things down. Thank goodness for TV. Which will that's going to have to keep a lot of us entertained here for the next couple of weeks, if not longer.
Yeah, and you're a great historian, Bruce. The two events, I guess, in recent memory were the JFK assassination and 9/11. That really just that massive punch to the gut, shock to the system that impacted the sports world. But this is, I think, unlike anything we've ever seen, and in fact, the government officials are saying, at the end of the day, this is worse than 9/11.
Well, it's going to have. There was an end, although there's a little bit of an unknown 19 years ago, 18 and a half, whatever it was now, that something like that might happen again. But life got back to somewhat normal within a week, and then sports is an integral part of this, and people want to have something to look forward to. But now, we're reduced to just NFL news and NFL operating normally. And I think that's a very valuable thing. 1942, right after Pearl Harbor, FDR insisted baseball stay open. But you're right. This is a different sort of a deal. And because there's just an unknown end point to it. So we'll just have to roll with the punches and hope. My gut feel is that if within 2 months, if they decide things have started to look a little bit better, they may, I'm not sure if the CDC will change that edict of no more than 50 people together, which might even be less than that by that point. But they might, if they start easing up on that, they might encourage the sports to begin, but maybe without fans in the stands for a while, and hopefully some point and I would say June 1, that's my gut feel, is the best case for hockey, baseball, and basketball to restart, and then maybe by the end of June, letting fans in the games. That's just my own opinion, but
no, it's a certainty. Your opinion's spot on. There's, the one thing would be if they could find a way to bridge the gap and start to ease their way back in. The sports will return without fans, and we're going to dive in here and talk about the NFL, but as this is the focus and our one opportunity to gather here today, the news came out, the first NHL player tested positive, and an Ottawa senator who ended up being in the locker room at Staples Center right after the New Jersey Nets were there. And then Kevin Durant, prior to the announcement by the Senators, had been in that same locker room. It just speaks volumes to the insane, contagious nature of this thing.
Yeah, all the Lakers are self-quarantined there because of the Staples thing. I'm sure anybody who was there probably will as well. So there you go. There's another example. It's touched sports. It's touched every industry, every aspect has been hit by this thing.
Well, but we could go on. We could probably do 2 hours today, but let's just do a brief overview. It's crazy. This is a day that we could literally go on and on and on and on and on when not much is going on anywhere without, with the exception of the NFL. And I guess let's start at the top with Tom Brady going to the Bucs. And Circus Sports had NFL season win totals out. They put out the beginning of the week. On Monday, they were 9, and the Bills were 8. The Bills make a big trade. We'll get to that in a bit. But the Bills make a trade to upgrade their offense. And in free agency, the Bills have gone to 8.5 over 15. Brady's gone. The Patriots dropped down to 8.5. Breaking news, folks. The Buffalo Bills are the favorite to win the AFC East. And all of a sudden, look at Tampa Bay, and their projected season win total is 8.5. They're stuck in a division with the Saints, but we're going to see Breeze and Brady a couple of times, and that division is going to be really salty. But Brady's big development here, Bruce.
Yeah, and that Tampa Bay kind of came up out of nowhere there. I didn't hear much buzz about the Bucs at all until the last few days, and then all of a sudden it became apparent they were ready to pay up here, and some of these other contenders for Brady peeled off. And the longer this thing went, and we didn't see any sort of a peace pipe or whatever you want to say between the Patriots or Brady and the Patriots or vice versa, it began to dawn that, yeah, maybe he is actually going to leave. It had never gone this far before. It was always sort of a curious relationship there with there wasn't much drama ever with Brady ever, sticking around New England. And there was a lot of this offseason. So I guess the smoke signals were there a while back. But Tampa Bay's involvement in this, at least nationally, a lot of people that they weren't really on the radar much. Maybe they should have been, because they seem to certainly be a team looking for a candidate to come in there at quarterback. A lot of people are thinking Philip Rivers might be a more adequate short-term fix there. It looks like they're going to move on from Jameis, and Rivers just moved there with his family to Florida. But the Brady thing came out of nowhere, and that changed the dynamics. Also, with Teddy Bridgewater apparently linking up with the Panthers, that has suddenly become, as interesting a division as there is in the NFL. Breeze, the Saints, the Falcons there's a lot of buzz around the Falcons after the way they closed last season too. So that division all of a sudden looks like the most intriguing in the league.
Well, the Philip Rivers, $25 million for 1 year to the Colts. There's a lot about Philip Rivers you look at, and I don't know, it's maybe unfairly you attached the shortcoming of the Chargers. You kind of hitched it to his wagon. The one thing I would say, and I thought Brissett was fine, but I think Indianapolis is extremely well coached by Frank Reich. And I think, in Houston has literally been a fire sale. I think the Tennessee-Indianapolis race in the AFC South will be quite intriguing now. I give Rivers a shot to actually have, and I'm not a big fan, but I give him a shot to have a really big year for them. And Tennessee was able to keep the band together.
Yeah, in Indy's case, it really is, Rivers really is a bridge to whatever comes next, but he's a pretty good bridge. And I think the way Brissett, down the stretch last year, Brissett started to have some problems. We saw some of that with Kyle Allen with the Carolina too. At one point, it looked like both those guys could be long-term answers, and maybe they weren't. Still, the
defensive coordinators get film on them, Bruce. Once they get tape on them, and they figure the way to take their main thing away. Some of these guys just don't have enough bullets in the holster.
Yeah, they don't figure out how to change, and then things happen. Indy's case, the thought was that injuries, along with the quarterback situation last year, conspired to keep the Colts out of the playoffs. But Chris Ballard, the GM, had probably had built a playoff caliber roster. They made the postseason the year before. Last year it was sort of lack of depth that did them in December, but they were sitting there at 6-3 at one point and looked like they were playoff bound and stayed in the race till right at the end. So maybe Rivers does. Rivers did drop considerably last year, though, but there were some other things going on with the Chargers. They had a lot of injuries last year. You had the Gordon holdout at the start. And as recently as 2 years ago, Rivers was pretty dangerous and got the Chargers into the playoffs. So We'll see. If Brissett is still there, so I would think they're going to give Rivers, first look. And if he starts to struggle and the turnover things happen, they always could go back to Brissett. But if it's the Rivers from 2 years ago and he hasn't dropped that much, this is a big move for the Colts.
And honestly, Bruce, I would say this: in the AFC, the Ravens, they've kind of kept the band together. It's just a smart organization and piling up draft picks, and they're at 11.5. They and the Chiefs, the Super Bowl hangover is always a concern, but the Ravens and Chiefs look very salty. I would, in a weird way, it started very quietly for them, but I honestly think the Buffalo Bills had an amazing couple of days in free agency, and the DeAndre Hopkins, Bill O'Brien, the Texans. My God, I mean, the Bills gave up a lot more for Stephon Diggs. And if you think about that offense now, John Brown got 1,000 yards receiving last year and was the home run threat, and he turned into a real reliable slant and post guy. But if you watch Diggs, this guy run after the catch and his ability to stretch the field, if those two guys stay healthy, Bruce, you got speed on the outside that either guy can stretch the field, and Beasley is almost uncoverable underneath. It's a lot's on Josh Allen right now, but the reality of it is the Bills, all the picks they gave up, they were going to draft a wide receiver in the first round. Yep. So in essence, they gave up like a fourth, a fifth, and a seventh. Oh my God, the price. But that's what they were going to take a proven commodity here who's under contract with term. And the reality of it is that defense is just flat out too good to squander. I think the Bills have a big say what goes on in the AFC next year.
Yeah, I'm surprised if you're saying they've got Circa's got a number at 8.5 wins. This team won 10.
I can't believe that number.
Yeah. They won 10 last year and
got better.
And got better. They looked like they were on the ascent. We'll get to Diggs in a second. I've liked some of the other things that Brandon Beane has done here. Now, we knew that Jordan Phillips, who kind of had a breakout year, and he gambled on himself last year by signing a 1-year deal, that he would be in play here for somebody. So Arizona plucked him. But the Bills, they moved really quick to fill that any defensive line void. Adding Quentin Jefferson and Vernon Butler. I mean, they've quickly filled gaps there,
and quickly replaced Lawson. Yep. With Addison on the edge.
Mario Addison from Carolina comes in. They sign him to a 3-4 year deal here.
Josh Norman, by the way, too.
Josh Norman has also come in. So, Beane had about $89 million in cap space. So about the only thing he hasn't done here is retain Phillips, and that looked like it was going to be a long shot, but he's actually added depth on his defensive line. He's picked up a couple of more playmakers for an already good defense, and we knew they were going to get, they were targeting a receiver in the draft, but now you got one who's an established force in Stephon Diggs. So I think everything is looking up for Buffalo. The only thing they may still look for is a bigger target there. Diggs is still not big, and in the red zone, you want one of those. Most of the Bills receivers are still kind of Smurf-like, so you might want one bigger target they could. And there's options out there, and that's something they could address down the road. But the key things here, another big time target though. I mean, Diggs is a legit. It fills that role perfectly for them, and that's what they were going to be shopping for in the draft. And they found the guy, and they've also, I think, improved an already good defense.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I was thinking the same thing. And full disclosure, I mean, I'm a big backer of the Bills, always have been, but I was honestly I played their over number. I thought it was a horrible number last year, Bruce. I thought they were guaranteed to be an 8-win team. I thought 9 was realistic, and they won 10. And to make the number 8.5 over here, I would think the betting public, as time would go on, I've got to believe that number. I mean, it certainly gets to 9. I can't imagine it doesn't get to 9.5.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think New England is a little bit more of an intriguing situation here because they showed some signs of erosion last year, and we want to say, well, a lot of people will trust Belichick, but sometimes these guys, it's hard to keep pulling rabbits out of the hat here, and it sounds like they're saying all the things, Jarrett Stidham this, Jarrett Stidham that, maybe. But that would seem to be an awful risk to me to go in with him as your guy. I would expect Belichick to make a move to bring in another veteran here. It could be an Andy Dalton, Cam. I don't know. But there's a couple of guys out there as cover for Stidham that may, if they, you will know in the draft how much.
You think it'd be Andy Dalton, Bruce? Andy Dalton kind of doesn't make horrible sense, right?
Andy Dalton makes sense, I think, just because a game manager, and I think that's what, I mean, Brady has been the ultimate game manager there for a while, for many years, and I think Dalton can probably do that. So I would think, yes, that would be. And then, if Stidham's not quite ready, I think we will know more about. I think that's a given that Belichick's going to find another veteran option there, and there's a few, like we mentioned, like Dalton out there in the market. But in the draft, if they don't look for a quarterback in the first couple of rounds, that would suggest they do have some confidence in Stidham.
It's Stidham. But don't you? I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. In the Patriots, they have all these compensatory picks and all. They could do something wacko on the first round, and maybe they trade up and get a QB. And the other thing in the division, clearly the Dolphins showed a lot of fight last year when people thought they were going to be historically bad, and they've been ridiculously active in free agency. And Darnold, another year under his belt. The big difference, I mean, the big picture is, the Patriots that were, mortal lock to go at least 5-1 in the division, if not go unbeaten every year for the last 15 years. That division, there could be some cannibalization there, so that'll be nuts. And I guess, on the Brady thing, and I brought this up on my radio show yesterday, with Brady going to Tampa Bay, the one thing he won't do is lose games, right? I mean, that's what Jameis Winston did. He'd throw for 6 million yards and throw 2 pick sixes and lose the game. Brady won't lose games. He'll manage games. But is Belichick, is it more between the lines? Forget the soap opera and what Brady wanted and what this one wanted. If Bill Belichick is a guy who's not going to pay for past glories and mortgage the future, I mean, is he not the most, and not in a mean way, this is who he is, but he's just cold. I mean, listen, it's not best for the organization. Is Brady not re-signing in Tampa Bay? Is that not Belichick telling the world his skill set is rapidly declining?
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. And by the way, there is a rumor floating out there, and there's among a lot of rumors in the NFL, but that Belichick might be plotting that trade way up in the first round, like you mentioned a possibility a moment ago, Brian, and the Tua Tagovailoa from his Alabama's in his sights, and that Saban has told him, he's recovered, he's ready, he's your guy. If you can get him, and that would shake up the first round, and it would shake things up. But yes, you're very right, about Belichick, and I always thought he was capable of doing this if he really thought. He's the ultimate pragmatist here in the NFL, and that if he that did say something about if Brady's skill set has eroded. But one thing about Tampa Bay, last note, 30 picks. Winston also had 12 fumbles he lost last year too. This is a staggering haul. They lost 6 games by a touchdown or less. Brady hasn't thrown 30 interceptions over the last 5 years combined. So if Tampa Bay can eradicate that terrible minus they had in the turnover margin last year because of Jameis, all of a sudden, that does change the prospects, it would seem, for the Bucs.
I've done this for more than a decade with Bruce Marshall. When he does this to me, I'm always ready. A pragmatist is a person who is guided more by practical considerations than by ideals. That's not me being smart. That's me looking it up.
That's Belichick.
Well done.
Very good.
There's so much, Bruce. I would just say other big takeaways. The Vikings, clearly, you look at it. I mean, this is a run-first team now. They move on from Diggs, who, if he behaves and he was a bit of a distraction, blah, blah, blah. But nonetheless, you had quite the combo there. With the wide receivers and the tight end, and it is now this is going to be a 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of team.
It seems like this is Mike Zimmer would like to do things. They did extend, they extended Kirk Cousins a while back, so that's that was kind of important there. Some of the other teams that we thought might be in the market for a quarterback or something. The Raiders have yet to. They did add Jason Witten. They haven't done anything with the quarterback yet. The fact Cam Newton is officially now on the market, I think adds a little bit more spice, and there's a variety of potential landing spots for him. One I would watch would be in Chicago, perhaps. They have announced Mitchell Trubisky is coming back. They did that at the end of last season, but neither Ryan Pace nor Matt Nagy said there wouldn't be any extra competition for him. Well, that might not be a bad spot for Cam to come in. I don't believe any team is going to gamble on Newton with a long-term contract here yet. I think he's going to be looking probably at a 2-year deal, maybe with an option at a third. I'm not sure, but I mean, with his recent injury history, it's sort of buyer beware. But he does provide intriguing upside, and for some of these teams, like the Bears, I think he would provide real interest. The Raiders could still be in the Cam market too. I think there's more to come from Las Vegas now, as we call them, and I'm not sure Witten's going to be an earth-shaking move for them, adding him, but I think more to come from the Raiders for sure.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. One of the biggest developments would be in terms of the Raiders. Probably been a long 72 hours for Derek Carr, but they bring Mariota in and.
Oh yes, they did. You're right. They did bring one in. Yeah, Mariota.
Yeah, so
right.
they bring Mariota in, but then basically they're saying they're gonna, suit up and go get after it with Derek Carr.
Yeah, you're right. They did. I missed that. They got Mariota. That's right. Skip me there. But yes, they have. That's how the Raiders address this. And a lot of people thought Mariota might be someone who would land in New England if Brady left there. The Eagles were talking about bringing him in as backup to Wentz because Wentz has been hurt so much. I thought Mariota. Now there's mixed bag on him. It's mostly negative now that he just didn't get the ball downfield and just looked too timid there with Tennessee. And the fact they started to win with Tannehill, a lot of that was just handing the ball more to Derrick Henry. They sort of switched the offense around. But Mariota had every chance there. But there's still some people who think he, in a more freewheeling offensive system, he might be able to flourish. And he's good competition there for Carr. And he's sort of the way Tannehill was last year in Tennessee. They brought him in after being a starter somewhere else, and he was ostensibly the backup to Mariota, but they knew Mariota was on a short leash. And I think Carr has got that situation too. I mean, this is a make or break year for him with the Raiders, but if it's not going well after a month or so, then there's Mariota sitting just the way Tannehill was in Mariota's last stop at Tennessee. So I'd keep an eye on that as well.
All right, let's at least give them a nod here and talk about it. America's team. The Cowboys are at 9.5 over $1.30, and honestly, Bruce, I don't get that one. We know how porous the NFC East was last year. The Giants certainly could improve with a young quarterback in the second year. Redskins got work to do, but they were competitive. The Eagles are sitting at 9. But with the Cowboys, they kept the band together. Well, okay. I think Prescott's good. I think just because he's a Cowboys quarterback, I think he's massively overrated. And you do have Elliott. But here you look at them and what they've done here, a 5-year, $100 million deal for Amari Cooper, who has plantar fasciitis, Bruce. I mean, you watch these foot problems rear their ugly head over the course of this contract. The Prescott soap opera they got to figure out. And then they go and get Gerald McCoy, who's archaic. I don't know that the Cowboys have really done that much here, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean the defense. They've Byron Jones.
Oh, and by the way, Sean Lee stays, Bruce, and if he sneezes, he gets hurt. He's a great player that can't stay on the field.
Yeah, I mean they've two of their defensive mainstays though they've let walk here. and Byron Jones will probably be the top paid cornerback in this free agent class. He's with the Dolphins now. Robert Quinn has gone to Chicago, and these are guys like in the prime of their careers, and they have been allowed to walk. Your Randall Cobb, by the way, has moved also, and he's down to Houston now. So you're right, Cooper. I mean, boy, that's a risk there because you're right. I mean, staying healthy, and he's got the problem with the foot that could certainly arise.
It never goes away.
Yeah, telling you, I've had it too.
It's torture.
Much of my adult life, it flares up and then it doesn't. So, and I'm not an NFL wide receiver, so there you go. But I think the Dak thing, though, here I think Jerry might have made the right move because I think we might have talked about this before. But as much as Dak's guys always and his agents, Team Dak, always wanted that big contract, and they were hammering for it all last season, and certainly after the first month when Dak was putting up those big numbers. Jerry resisted at that point. I think he always had in the back of his mind, no, I'm going to do franchise for 1 year here with Dak, and I want to make sure before he becomes my quarterback to take me back to the Super Bowl. Now, as last season progressed, you saw a flattening out of Prescott's numbers, and it became pretty apparent. He was posting a lot of numbers against lesser opposition early, and when they needed him, when the Cowboys needed to rise to the moment, again, and it was basically in that penultimate game against the Eagles last December at the Link, they couldn't do it. And I think that spoke more volumes about Dak. I don't know that he's the guy to get this team to the Super Bowl like Jerry thinks. I don't know that this roster is as close to Super Bowl quality as Jerry thinks. We'll see. I mean, he's got a new coach in there, and McCarthy's not going to – I'm sure one of the stipulations was, Jerry, I don't want you to give me advice like you always gave Garrett. We know that was one of the reasons I think Garrett stuck around so much longer, because he sort of had to listen to Jerry. So maybe McCarthy makes that much difference, but I'm not sure Dak is the guy. And I'm not sure. I mean, all these other moves, Cooper, and then letting some of these key defensive guys walk, is really in the best interest of Dallas. We'll see.
And let's wrap it up with this one. One to come would be, we talk about Jameis Winston. He could throw it all over the place, but he'd make bad decisions. But ordinary quarterbacks become really good quarterbacks when you have a good running game or a stout running game. I mean, I think Prescott falls in that equation with a guy like Elliott. Look what Tannehill became with Derrick Henry. Melvin Gordon is out there, and someone will pay big money, and we'll see. Running backs, you can say they're a dime a dozen, but the Dolphins, the Falcons, and the Bucs reportedly are the three teams. Now, the Falcons moved on from Devontae Freeman. I don't know if that's a tipping point, but the Dolphins have been spending money like it's water. But if the Bucs were to get Melvin Gordon, and you're talking Brady with that running back and Gordon and Evans on the edge, yikes. The Melvin Gordon situation here could prove really interesting. I think in the short term, it's a big win. It's a big risk to, pay a running back the boatload of dough they would. Long term, it might not be good, but boy, that next year where Melvin Gordon goes could have a big impact on a team's fortunes. Yeah,
the Bucs could get involved, though. They don't dislike their running backs they have with Jones and Barber, so they might be a little less aggressive here than Atlanta or Miami. I keep hearing Miami for Gordon and Atlanta, perhaps. Remember, Miami had Chris Greer had Drake. A lot of money to spend here. I mean, they were full of flush with cash. Mm-hmm. And they've also got a lot of draft picks coming up here too. So Miami is one of the more interesting movers. They've already jumped into the free agent market, and I think they could certainly be Gordon's landing spot there. Although Atlanta is more ready, I think, to be a contender immediately. That NFC South is a lot more interesting, as we mentioned, for the Brady Bridgewater switching sites and all that. But Miami looks like it could also be poised to make a move, and they're probably going quarterback first, and that's the popular thought is that Tua will probably still be there at 5 when the Dolphins pick, and that's the direction they would go unless somebody wants to get aggressive and leapfrog them. We will see, but I kind of think Miami is where Gordon lands, and that whole thing. you're right. Like you mentioned, the Dolphins have become more interesting in the East too. Suddenly, the whole East looks a lot more intriguing, doesn't it?
Yeah, I said we could go on all day with this. Well, let's wrap it up with this. I'm just curious though. The Dolphins, the splash. I thought they showed a lot of heart last year in the moves they've made here in free agency, and then you alluded to the picks that they've got coming. Are the Dolphins not a team you would take a look at? That a number that could go on the rise. You're seeing 6.5 over 15. Are the Dolphins not a team pending what they do? In the draft and the remainder of free agency, are they not a team that their number goes up to 7.5?
Yeah, I could see them doing that. Now they did just add Jordan Howard from the Eagles, but he wasn't that high price for them. They could go out and get Gordon. I think if they signed Gordon, Brian, I think that would be another chance for that number to tick up for Miami, and they'd get some love out there. They did impress down the stretch last year. Sometimes that's a false indicator, but a lot of people think Brian Flores knows what he's doing, and they know that the upgrades that were coming. Miami figured to have as much or more money to spend than anybody, and they got more draft picks than anybody coming up. So they are suddenly a very intriguing side, and they have been pretty active in the free agency already too, like you said. So this number could certainly go up in Miami.
All right, great information, Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet. I'm Brian Blessing in Las Vegas. What we'll do in the days to come. We'll break down every division. We'll plot the course. And the other thing, we didn't really dive into it yet today, Bruce. It was kind of an overview. But the one thing you have to really take into account is when you're looking at a team's season win totals, you got to look at their schedule. And we haven't done that great deep dive on that just yet. And then and I know that every year, oh man, look, they've got the toughest schedule, or the Patriots always played the weakest. I don't know how that worked out. But what we think today is soft or strong doesn't usually pan out.
Yeah, and they usually wait till early May to do that. I have thought the NFL could do a lot of people a favor by announcing that. I don't think they'll do it, but that would another bit of good news that people could use would be if they fast forwarded the schedule release much earlier to give again another people something to talk about. They usually do that right after the draft. So you're right. We won't have that's the normal course. It's early May when they do that. Now, let's hope they still do it here this year. Well, there's a lot going on, but we generally don't know until early May about the schedule.
All right. Hang in there, Bruce. It's a fun chat on the NFL Free Agent Frenzy. Betmaker, let's make some money tonight. Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com, and reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. an approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.